Aviation Gin, owned by former sexiest man alive and overall dreamy movie star Ryan Reynolds. And in this video, I'm going to give you my honest review on his gin. Is it worth your time? Should you pick up a bottle? Is it a good gin? And to answer that, I tried it 3 different ways before finally giving you my thoughts on if Aviation Gin is worth it. So what is Aviation Gin? Well, Aviation Gin is a gin that was originally created in 2006 in Portland, Oregon, and they call it an American dry gin. But the reason we all kind of care about it is because in 2018, Ryan Reynolds became a part owner of Aviation Gin, and it started to explode all over our TVs and on the internet, and that's how we got here. I have a smaller bottle here. It's a 375 milliliter, but if you get a 750, it usually costs about $22, so not the most expensive gin on the market, reasonably priced. The bottle's pretty sleek. I like the way it looks. It gives off this really like old-timey kind of vibe, kind of like almost maybe pre-prohibition or like 1920s in a way. It's a nice bottle, it's sleek, it's pretty. All right, so let's get to tasting it. So I am going to taste this gin in 3 different ways. I want to be able to taste this in applications rather than just by itself. Because I think that different spirits, they may not taste that great on their own, but maybe in a cocktail or in a mixed drink, they could do the job. So first we are gonna taste it on its own though. All right, so I do kind of get what they were saying there by it being kind of an American dry gin. It's not very juniper forward. You get just very, very small hint of juniper. And it is very dry, so there's almost no florality to this gin at all, really. Overall, not too terrible tasting on its own. I know people don't really drink gin on its own, but what can I say? It doesn't taste bad on its own. Next, we're gonna try the Aviation Gin in a gin and tonic, because what's more classic for gin than a gin and tonic? So we're gonna do 1.5 ounces of our Aviation Gin right into our glass, fill it up with ice. And then last but not least, we're gonna use Fever Tree Tonic, my absolute favorite tonic out there. And then we're just gonna fill this up to the top. And can't forget a nice little lime wedge. All right, let's give that a sip. Not bad. I find that in my gin and tonic, because the tonic has kind of that dry-ish flavor on its own, I like my gin and tonics with a more floral gin, but that's just kind of a personal thing. Smooth, easy to sip, refreshing, and nice. Served cold, a little bit of lime over the top. Pretty good G&T if I do say so myself. And so now we're gonna make a pretty simple gin cocktail to see how the Aviation plays with other flavors in a cocktail. I'm gonna be making for you a Bee's Knees, which is one of my absolute favorite gin cocktails, and it's very, very easy to make. And let's get to it. So we're gonna do 3/4 ounce of honey syrup. Put that right into our shaker there. 3/4 ounce of freshly squeezed lemon juice. And then we are going to do 2 ounces of Aviation Gin. Lock this up and give it a good shake. All right, so now we're gonna grab our chilled coupe glass here and we're gonna double strain. And now let's give it a sip. So not bad, not bad. It kind of gets a little lost in there because it's such a dry gin and there's not much florality or juniper to it. It almost gets lost in this cocktail. You do taste a lot more of that lemon and a lot of that honey. It doesn't really feel like the gin is complementing the flavors all that much, but it by no means is bad. It's still a pretty good cocktail with the Aviation Gin. I just think that it gets a tiny bit lost in a cocktail, even a simple cocktail like this. So I would probably prefer something a little bit with a stronger flavor if making a cocktail like this. But again, really not bad of a cocktail, and it's not, you could definitely do worse than this in a cocktail. And so now that we've kind of gone over tasting it in 3 different ways, what are my final thoughts on Aviation Gin? Is it worth your time? Should you pick up a bottle? Is it a good gin? I believe that for the price, it's not a bad gin at all, especially if you're not accustomed to drinking stronger flavored gin. It's actually a pretty decent starting point. For the price that you can find it at around $20 to $22, it's really not that expensive. It's not gonna break the bank for you to pick up a bottle. And it's easy to drink. It goes well with all the different things that I said. I'm just a little picky with my gin. I like things that stand up a little bit more in flavor, but if you're really not accustomed to gin, I think that's a pretty decent starting gin. It's a good starting point for it. I think that if you love Ryan Reynolds and you wanna kind of support him, there's worse ways of doing it. I mean, it's a pretty okay gin. It's not bad, it's not terrible. I'd probably give it like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. I think there is room for improvement, but then again, I am a little picky. But two of my favorite gins that I should mention, which are not all that much more expensive than the Aviation, are Scapegrace and St. George's Botanivore. Scapegrace and St. George are two of my favorite gins. They have a much stronger kind of flavor. There's a lot more juniper in the Scapegrace, and the St. George's Botanivore has some really awesome botanicals, but it is their more of a take on the London Dry style. So they're both still dry-ish style gins, but they just have more flavor in my opinion. So I think that they stand up better in all of those applications that I mentioned, in a G&T, in a cocktail. They're both owned by some pretty awesome people, and I think that they do it the right way. So these are two of my recommendations if you wanted to try something outside of aviation. But if you really are one of those people who love celebrity spirits and want to know more about them, I highly recommend you check out this video I did right over here on Kendall Jenner's 818 tequila. And we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.